All right, welcome to the FOSDEM 2020 Distro Dev Room. Up next, we have Daniel Kuiper talking about GRUB upstream and distros cooperation.
Thank you. I will be talking about what is happening in the GRUB. I am Daniel Kuiper. I work for Oracle, and I'm software developer and GRUB upstream maintainer. At the beginning, some legal stuff, which is required by my company. So, program agenda, I will be talking at the beginning about GRUB maintenance. Later, I will move on to what happened during last year, and I will be also discussing what is happening right now in the GRUB project. Later, I will discuss main points, what are the problems in the project, and at the end, I would like to ask you what do you expect from the GRUB project. So, not much has changed since last year. There are still 3 GRUB maintainers, but I was able to convince 2 guys to join the project and support me with 3 things. Alexander the Graph decided to take over maintenance of RISC-V, and Leif Lindholm takes care of ARM and TUEFI. So I would like to thank them to taking over this work. What happened last year? Alexander the Graph introduced initial support for RISC-V, and he also introduced initial Travis CI support into the GRUB. Colin Watson from Ubuntu finally changed the method how GNU loop is integrated with the GRUB. Currently, it is much easier. It is well documented how to update the GNU loop, and I think it is the largest change which went into the GRUB last year. Eric Snowbeck from Oracle on the Beyond Forks request provided OBDisk driver for Spark platforms. Jesus added small modules which allows you to modify Intel MSR's read writes, and also this function will be used in other things. After a few years, Andre from ARM took over DHCP v4 work from Andrei Bozhenkov. He split dispatches into some logical parts, and we finally got native full support for DHCP v4. We still have support for bootp. Does anybody here use bootp in their networks? Nobody. But we still have a support for bootp. John at some point realized that binutils folks decided to drop out support for Spark 64, and he tried to convince binutils guys to get it back, but it wasn't possible. So he started thinking how to get back Spark 64 support into the GRUB, and fortunately it was quite easy. The patch was pretty small, surprisingly, and currently we have Spark 64 support into the GRUB back. Just before 2.04 release, Michael from SUSE realized that it is not possible to build GRUB with GCC 9, so he provided a set of patches which fixed this issue, and currently it is possible to use GCC 9 to build the GRUB. At the end of at the beginning of this year, Patrick introduced LAX2 support into the GRUB, so we are able to read encrypted boot partitions from the GRUB directly. And we had 2.04 release in the middle of last year, and it took most of these features which are listed on this slide, and also plenty fixes and cleanups. What's happening right now? The biggest thing which we are working on is a Trench Boot project, and currently we are doing 2 things in parallel. Me is focusing on TXT implementation for the GRUB. I had nice presentation together with Piotr from FreeMDEP about this work yesterday. FreeMDEP is focusing on AMD SKE implementation for the GRUB. I hope that I will be able to release the RFC for Intel TXT at the turn of February and March. On top of that, AMD SKE implementation will be merged. We are going to do that in that way because we think that there will be a lot of common parts between these two features provided by different companies. Finally, I was able to convince Red Hat folks to forward port all patches which are carried in Fedora to forward port to upstream all patches carried in Fedora and Red Hat. And here I would like to convince other distros to do the same, because currently it is difficult to, at least for example for Red Hat, to merge upstream with new releases, because they carry a lot of different patches. Also, it is difficult for us because we got some questions about things which currently are not upstream, and this creates a lot of confusion. Also, Red Hat plans to introduce Linux kexec usage to load another OS from the GRUB. It means that GRUB will run from small like a root environment, and it will use kexec to start a new operating system. At the end of last year, I met with FreeMDEP folks, and we also discussed some interesting features. For example, a redundant GRUB environment file. It can be used by some embedded devices to safeguard upgrades, and currently it is not possible to do that safely. So, for example, if something bad happens during the upgrade, then after reboot, machine were not able to start or something like that. So this environment file and how it works, it should be improved. FreeMDEP also are looking for TPM 2.0 support in legacy systems. Currently, there is a TPM driver in the GRUB, but it uses EFI calls, so it depends on EFI structure. But not all systems, especially embedded systems, provide UEFI, so it is not possible to use this TPM feature on non-UEFI system. There was also some discussion about Python integration with the GRUB. This can be surprising for some people, but it is used for some firmware validation tools, and I think that this is quite interesting usage for Python. We're also planning a GRUB 2.06 release this year. We are going to freeze the code around March, and the release probably no later than in June. Starting from now, we are planning to release the GRUB yearly if our infrastructure and our in general infrastructure and policy how we maintain the GRUB improve. Of course, we are able to make that release more often. Currently, all patches which are posted on the mailing list are at least build tested. So we do not accept any patches which broke any target, any platform which is provided by the GRUB. As I said, we are working on new code review and test system. I hope that we will be able to announce the details by the end of this year, and next year we will be able to use it as a replacement for the GRUB devel list or something like that. We are also discussing a Linux kernel UEFI boot protocol unification for all targets. Currently, right now, the problem is that x86 boot protocol on the UEFI mostly reminds something which was used on legacy BIOS machines. It simply does not use load file, sorry, not load file, load image as start image calls from UEFI, and things is completely different on ARM, RISC-V, etc. As far as I can tell, both platforms use just UEFI calls to load and execute PE binary. So we are thinking to change this boot protocol and make it common for all platforms which use UEFI as a firmware. This discussion just started, so I'm not able to provide any details. We have some rough idea right now, but I hope that we will have something to present in quite good stage in a few months, maybe faster. And finally, we are planning to admit officially that GRUB upstream is not able to support 62 sectors MBR GRUB on x86 PC targets. Sorry. This issue comes up from time to time on GRUB devel, and some people some distros try to solve that problem by cutting out some features. For example, as far as I can tell, somebody tried recently to cut off support for one of less common file systems. So I think this is not a good idea, and we have, because there will be more and more features, the core image will be larger and larger, and at some point we simply will not able to cut anything from this core image. So we are going to finally say in the documentation that we are not going to support the small MBR gaps. Probably we will suggest using MBR gaps larger than 1 kilo sectors, or just simply use GPT with BIOS boot partition. This is a suggested solution, and it is worth mentioning here that GPT partitions work without any issues on legacy BIOS platforms. If you have a BIOS boot partition on GPT, you are able to boot the GRUB or anything which support the BIOS boot partitions directly on the BIOS system. Does this thing create any issues for you? Or we can drop it and you will not complain?
In Ubuntu, we never force people to upgrade to GRUB 2 from GRUB 1, so from time to time we still have machines on GRUB 1, so yeah, we don't care.
Okay. The note from Ubuntu guy from Ubuntu was note that they do not allow to upgrade from the GRUB.
We didn't force people to.
You do not force people to upgrade from GRUB 1 to GRUB 2, so they think this is not a problem for them. I hope. We will see. Perfect. That's great. Pain points. So we are still fighting with the problem that we don't have enough throughput to review all patches, and there are, in my opinion, huge delays on the mailing list because I'm not allowed to spend all my time on maintaining GRUB. I would like to do that, but currently it is not possible. So I would like to ask you if you are able to look at the patches and send at least a reviewed by or something like that. It will be helpful for me. If you know somebody who knows the GRUB quite well or something, or would like to know something in the GRUB, that will be perfect. Also, we still would like to improve the cooperation with distros and other interested parties. As I said, currently we are in quite good cooperation with Red Hat, so we are very happy. And there are two problems which appear from time to time on the mailing list, that people start posting patches and after a few exchanges of the emails, they disappear from the mailing list. This is annoying because, let's say, I spent my time reviewing patches, and after that, we simply lose the feature. I lost my time reviewing the patches, and I'm not able to take over this patch, to take over the work on this patch. So I lose my time, we lose features. So please do not do that. And from time to time, it seems that some people do not carefully read the maintenance comments. So I sent some replies with my comments, and after that, I received a new version of the patches, but I see that some comments are not taken into the account. So this is also annoying, and please do not do that because this doesn't help. And recently, I found out that some people start working on new feature. That's nice, but they are starting. They start that work on the not on the GRUB upstream, but they start work on the specific GRUB version which is in the distro. This is crazy, especially if the distro carries tons of patches. Which are not forward ported to upstream. So I would like to encourage you, if you would like to provide new features, start your work on GRUB upstream. If you need some features which are needed for your work from a specific distro, please forward port this feature first into the GRUB upstream and then start work. Of course, it takes time, but I think that it will make my life as an upstream maintainer easier, and also GRUB distro maintenance easier. And I think that's it. And I would like to start the discussion. What do you care about in the GRUB project? What is important for you right now? I outlined our work plan, let's say, for a year. Is it okay for you? Do you think that we should change something? In general, after discussion with various people, I think that we should focus on the system, which is a review process and also is automatic tests of GRUB and all patches which were provided to the GRUB. So I'm looking for questions. Yep, sure.
Just about kind of your last point. If you've got
This one. Oh.
Distributions have users and customers. You know, if they have to deliver new features to their users and to their customers by a certain time for, let's say, commercial interest, is it really that that wrong that they work on their code base when doing it upstream because of your throughput issues? They can't. They're not going to be able to get it in GRUB for a year.
Okay, the question was, as I understand it correctly, does it make sense to work, or I agree that maybe it is better if a distro works on the new feature instead of on the GRUB distro specific version instead of GRUB upstream, and does it I accept it. I understood correctly?
My point, I guess my question was, you said it was crazy that distributions were not working upstream on new features.
Yeah.
If a distribution has to get a new feature out by a certain time, isn't it crazy to ask them to work upstream because you have a throughput problem? There's two sides to this coin. I just wanted to kind of put the other side on the table.
Oh, I can understand. I understand. As I understand correctly, you are saying that if they are forced by customers to have a new feature in the specific distro, I'm okay with that.
Okay.
Okay, but I would like to ask you to, let's say, as soon as possible to forward these patches to the GRUB upstream. I'm not able to forbid you to work on a specific GRUB upstream. Okay, but I would like to convince you to not do that. Okay, sure. From the last row.
Mine's quick and related. How about making the release pace more quicker, like two releases per year?
Yes. First of all, the question was, is it possible to shorten the release cadence, right? Yes, currently, yes and no. It will be possible if we have a new review system and we will have some system which automates the testing of the GRUB. So I'm considering that. I hope that it will happen year no later, and then we will consider shortening the cadence of release. Sure.
You mentioned that on the AP system you try to access TPM.
Excuse me?
On new AP systems you try to access the TPM check for some security reasons. So is this something that, for instance, in U-boot should be also implemented as protocol that you would want to consume?
The question was that I mentioned during my presentation that there is a TPM implementation in the GRUB which use UEFI features. And the question is, do I suggest that U-boot should provide these UEFI calls to have a TPM? If you would like to have a better security infrastructure in the U-boot, I think that it makes sense to have that feature. But I'm not sure how is it complicated to have that in U-boot, because as far as I can tell, U-boot is focused on embedded systems. So it can not only okay.
But U-boot also has some TPM drivers. That's why I was asking.
So I think that if you would like to use TPM infrastructure in the GRUB, it makes sense to expose this TPM via FE calls to the GRUB. Does it reply your question? Okay. Okay.
There are a few issues with the GRUB configuration file. Right now, there are GUI configuration and kernel loading configuration as a sort in one single file. And it is very complicated to manage, especially if the file is signed and the kernel is updated. The file needs to be regenerated when the GUI stays the same. What I'm saying, maybe it is a point to separate these two things: the menu configuration and the kernel configuration.
And the question is how to upgrade the system if, for example, you take measurement of configuration file, configuration command line of the kernel or something like that. Yes?
Yes, and it's also a proposal to separate maybe the menu part of the configuration. And
what do you mean menu part? Do you mean generic configuration of?
I mean all these menu entries that we see in
the UI, the
UI
splash screen.
Ah, okay.
They highlight.
Oh, okay.
Right?
So
and then repeating it for every menu.
okay. I understand. I understand. In general, this is it goes into larger topic in general, because if you measure your system and then after that upgrade your system, then you have much more problems than just updating the measurements of the GRUB configuration. You have to also upgrade the measurements of the kernel, init, RD, etc., etc. We are working on some dynamic root of trust systems in the Oracle, and at initial phase of this work, we are aware that at some point we may meet these issues, but currently we don't have any good idea how to solve. So we have some rough ideas, but we don't have good ideas how to solve this problem. So time is up. I will be outside. You can catch me and chat if you need. Thanks a lot, guys.